Hey everybody, welcome to Better Than Bad with Buck. You may know me from my podcast, the Social Liability Podcast that I do with my buddy Raz on the Mount Moon crew. Definitely check us out if you get a chance, but for all intents and purposes, I'm going to show you how to make a bad situation bearable with a little bit of positive thinking. That's pretty much the purpose of this. That, and I'm chronically bored and chronically ill. And for lack of anything better to do, why not? Let's go ahead and dive into the meat and potatoes of this. Um, I am 37 years old. I am suffering from primary progressive multiple sclerosis, which I was diagnosed with on January 29th, 2011. I'm currently in a wheelchair. My bladder is dead for all intents and purposes again. It's in a bag, right? And I actually keep it mounted to my wheelchair. There's my bladder. Um, you know, but in all reality, it's really not that bad. But, I've learned to deal with my situation by basically saying, I don't really have a choice in it, so I'm either going to have to deal with it or I'm going to have to be a whiny little sack of, stereotypical crap. And I refuse to do that. So, um, let's just see what the internet has to say about some of the things that you should never say to a person in a wheelchair. I pulled this from the mobilityresource.com and is written by a lady named Tiffany Carlson, also a wheelchair user from Minneapolis. It's a very well written article, by the way. But anyhow, these are some of the things that you should never say to a person in a wheelchair. And I will tell you how I feel about these particular remarks as we go about them. Number one, slow down there. You might get a speeding ticket. So, the author of this article writes, "We may be on four wheels, but please hold off on comparing us to other four-wheeled vehicles such as a car." I've been in a wheelchair for 20 years, and I probably heard this line about 1,000 times from random strangers. Family and friends know better. When you do see a wheelchair user and have a huge urge to blurt the speeding ticket line, always remember these two things. It's not funny, and it's not original. So that is what Tiffany has to say about this. Me personally, I love that line. It cracks me up every time I hear it, and I normally tell somebody, you shout to me, "Hey, slow down, you get a speeding ticket." I go, "Hey, I'm not speeding, I'm qualifying." Or, "Didn't you know that second place is the first loser?" I get a kick out of it, but apparently it's something that you should never say. If you ever see me, please call me on a speeding ticket, and I guarantee you I have about 1,000 snotty rebuttals all lined up in a row that I will deliver with a smile. Two, what happened to you? Again, Tiffany says there are countless other ways to go about asking why someone uses a wheelchair other than asking them point blank, what happened to you? There's a polite way to ask this, but you really can't go there unless you know them a little bit first. It's not really any of your business, just like how you wouldn't want your personal issues open for discussion with strangers either. Again, I guess I can see that particular viewpoint on it, but me personally, I think it's hilarious, again, when people ask what happened to me, because you'll never get the truth. At least not at first. I'll never, ever, 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 ever just come right back at you and go, "Oh, I have MS." I'll normally say something like shark attack or the parachute didn't open. That's a good one. Or if you see a kid looking at you like, you normally go, "I should have listened to my mom." And then you just keep on rolling. I mean, I personally don't get offended by that. Three, how fast does that thing go? Tiffany says, this is a question power wheelchair users hear constantly. That is the truth. I do hear this constantly. It is a valid question. but rather annoying one when that really doesn't matter. It's small talk, like the weather, but it's small talk we've had way too many times. Let me save everyone the trouble and share how fast power wheelchairs can go, so you don't have to ask anymore. Top speed chairs can go between 6 to 8 miles an hour, and most powerful wheelchairs can go around 4 to 5 miles an hour tops, about as fast as a bike ride. I know that my particular wheelchair, I drive a Quickie. Yes, that is the brand name, and their slogan is "Nothing beats a Quickie." I'm not sure if that's true, but I know that in fifth gear here, right there, I will proudly boast a top speed of 7 miles per hour, and on a single charge, I can do that constantly for 17 miles. That that is far better than your normal walker. So, anyhow, again, I don't get offended by that question at all. Apparently, it's something you should never say to a wheelchair user, but to me, perfectly okay. Do you know so and so in a wheelchair too? Since a disability is one of the last minorities to be more understood by the mainstream, many still have some archaic ideas about it. And one is that they think we all must know each other. This world is not a village, just like you would never ask an African American if they know your friend Michael, who is also African American. You should never ask this to someone who uses a wheelchair. Again, I would have to chalk that one up to a personal pet peeve. I don't get offended by it. I just simply go, no, never met him. Sounds like a good person though. It's small talk. That's all that really boils down to, in my eyes. Number 5, is your significant other also in a wheelchair? A nurse at my doctor's office actually asked me this one, and it blew me away because it was such an old-fashioned idea, and she wasn't that old. Asking this ridiculous question will make you sound ancient. With some of us, while some of us end up dating and marrying another wheelchair user, it only happens like 15% of the time, if that. So do yourself a favor and simply ask this question, unless you don't mind shoving your foot in your mouth. Okay. I don't really understand why someone would get offended by these questions so far. I mean, some of them are pretty silly, but none of them are really that far off the mark. But either way, continuing on, I'd rather die than be disabled. I was told this by a fellow student while in college. I would rather die than be like you. I don't think she meant it like that, but it certainly stayed with me all these years. And by the way, maybe you do feel this way, and maybe you are entitled to your feelings, but it's probably never a good idea to share this with someone with a disability. I'm going to have to go ahead and co-sign that one. There are a bunch of different ways for you to illustrate your apparent disgust of the thought of using a wheelchair yourself, other than professing you would rather be dead. It would be a very short conversation that you and I had if you let off with that, but I definitely wouldn't chastise you or bastardize you for it. I would just kind of give you an odd side glance and be like, that's an interesting comment to make to somebody you've just met. But moving along. Okay, number 7. I've actually heard this one before. You're good looking for being in a wheelchair. Gussy yourself up real good, lose some weight, buy a new outfit, slick back your hair, however you make yourself look hot. Chances are, when you go out in the public looking this way, you may get some crazy quips from random walkers by, and the most common, the backhanded compliment. You're too good looking to be in a wheelchair. If you really want to flatter someone in a wheelchair who has their head on straight, you'll get nowhere with this compliment. Instead, just tell them they look great without the wheelchair. And remember, beauty can be found in any place, even if in the seat of a wheelchair. If we can go to the moon, an attractive person in a wheelchair is possible. I mean, I kind of like that rebuttal. If we can make it to the moon, then decent looking people can be in wheelchairs. There's nothing I can say to really argue with that logic. I just I wouldn't be offended by it. I'd take it as a compliment. I'd be like, ooh, somebody thinks I'm good looking. Yay. Good for you is the next one. Perhaps one of the most outrageously awful things you can say to someone who uses a wheelchair is good for you. Whenever we do something basic like pick up a dropped item, or something that we you know happen to let slip from our grasp on the wheelchair.
Good for you.
Yeah, basically, good for you is just, it really is a kind of a backhanded compliment, you know, but not something that would really offend me. Just something that I would kind of look at somebody and be like, well, what did you mean by that? But I don't even think I'd even ask for a follow up. I'd just say thank you and move on through my day. A lot of times you don't hear these quote comments from people that you're gonna like sit around and have a beer with. So it's just easier to just take it for what it is and let everybody keep on moving. Da-da-da-dum. Can I ask you a personal question? Not, excuse me. No one in a wheelchair can go unscathed from this notorious preamble of a question. And whenever I hear it, it reminds me of an episode of My Gimpy Life, which is a great web series starring Teal Shearer, an actress and paraplegic, who, when getting money out of an ATM, a guy in line went on to ask her if she could have sex by first asking if he could ask for a personal question. Again, a valid question, but you shouldn't ask a wheelchair user unless you're close. We're not talking parrots on display for your amusement. I don't think that asking in that way with a preamble is a good way to segue into a personal question. Can I ask you a personal question? It really, like, nothing good comes after that, in my opinion. I mean, I don't mind personal questions. I just don't like hearing somebody preamble it that way. As far as, like, having sex and stuff like that goes, of course we can. Do you think I would have a caregiver slash wife if I mean, come on. So, anyhow, at number 10, hey, Racer, can you pop a wheelie?
Go Speed Racer, go!
And lastly, there's nothing like calling a full grown adult who uses a wheelchair Speed Racer. We are beyond wanting to be named after cartoon characters. Sometimes we can go faster when we're late, but please don't call us Speed Racer as we roll by. Again, if I'm moving super fast to begin with, I'm not really going to care what you have to say about it. I'm just going to keep on going. Or I might just give you some snarky sidelong reply. It's nothing that I would get offended about. And I would certainly say that these aren't things you should never say to a person in a wheelchair. I mean, being disabled kind of comes with a lot of things that you just don't want to have to deal with. And people's sidelong comments, glances, questions, insecurities, things like that, they're last on the list of things that I would get offended by. Yeah, I think that we have an obligation as disabled people to kind of bear the mantle and show everybody else that the world may not be fair, but it is able to be survived in, regardless of the circumstances you have at your you know regardless of your own personal circumstances. It's just it can be a really convoluted web. What to say, what not to say. I would suggest that you just come up and say how you doing. if you got a personal question, ask me. I'll answer it. But I can see why somebody out there would feel the need to, give an itemized list of do's and don'ts. It sounds to me that these lists are more the product of people's own personal pet peeves. But either way, it's fun to see what the perspective of the internet can be. So maybe next time we'll cover some of the more oddball questions that you might have for a disabled person. If you got anything that might be itching on your mind, go ahead and drop it in the comments section, and I'll try to get around to answering it. Just do me a favor, hit like and subscribe, and we'll continue to roll out more content and see if we can't get this thing to take off a little bit better. All right, guys. It's great having you guys around. Thank you for joining me. And remember, life is better than bad.